Imagine being alive, your mind crystal clear, but your body frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. For most, this would mean silence forever. But one man chose to fight back with just the blink of an eye. What he created shocked the entire world. Paris, December 1995. Jean-Dominique Bauby was at the height of success. At just 43 years old, he was the celebrated editor-in-chief of Elle magazine, moving through a world of glittering parties, powerful friends, and elegant Parisian streets. He had everything: wealth, respect, talent, and a family who adored him. But fate has a cruel way of striking when it is least expected. One ordinary day, Jean was driving with his son to a seaside town. His thoughts were carefree, the air crisp with winter. Suddenly, a sharp pain ripped through his head. In an instant, his vision blurred, his body collapsed, and his world went black. He had suffered a massive stroke. When Jean woke up weeks later, he found himself in a hospital bed. The familiar world of Paris, his office, and his loved ones had vanished. Instead, there were bright white walls, humming machines, and the endless beeping of monitors. He tried to speak. No words came. He tried to move. Nothing happened. His arms lay heavy, his legs useless, his voice gone. Panic flooded him as he realized the truth. His mind was awake, but his body was locked. Doctors told him the name of this prison, locked-in syndrome. It was a cruel paradox. His brain was sharp, filled with thoughts and memories, but his body obeyed nothing. He could not hug his children. He could not call out for help. He could not even brush away a tear. For a man who once lived surrounded by glamour and noise, Jean was now trapped in silence. His body felt like a heavy iron cage, a deep-sea diving bell dragging him down into darkness. And yet, even in those first unbearable days, a spark remained inside him. He could still see. He could still dream. He could still feel his spirit flutter, desperate to be free. That was the moment he discovered the one lifeline left to him, his left eye. The days after Jean's awakening were filled with confusion and despair. Nurses moved in and out of his room, adjusting machines, checking charts, speaking words he could hear but could not answer. He wanted to shout, to tell them he was still alive inside, but his lips did not move. His voice had vanished. He tried to lift his hand, nothing. He tried to wiggle his toes, nothing. It was as if his body had been erased, leaving behind only a silent mind. The weight of the diving bell pressed heavily on him. He described it later as though he was trapped at the bottom of the sea, his thoughts echoing loudly in a space no one else could reach. But then hope. Doctors and therapists noticed something remarkable. Jean's left eye could still blink. Not a twitch, not a spasm, but a deliberate blink. To most people, it would have been insignificant. To Jean, it was salvation. A speech therapist entered with a strange chart. Letters arranged carefully in order of their frequency in French. She pointed slowly at each letter. When she reached the correct one, Jean blinked. Letter by letter, word by word, the silence began to break. The process was painfully slow. A single sentence could take minutes. A paragraph could take hours. But Jean was patient. He had no other choice. Through this fragile system, he began to speak again. He told doctors he could hear them, understand them, and remember every detail of his past life. He asked for his children. He joked with nurses. He described memories of Paris cafes, seaside breezes, and even the taste of food he could no longer eat. For the first time since his stroke, he was no longer invisible. His mind had a voice again, carried on the wings of a blinking eye. Yet at night, when the room grew quiet, the fear returned. How long could he survive like this? Would people eventually stop listening to the slow rhythm of his eye? Would he fade into silence again? But Jean refused to let despair consume him. If his body was the diving bell, heavy and sinking, his imagination would be the butterfly, delicate, free, soaring far beyond the limits of the hospital walls. And so, with patience and courage, he began to create. Each morning, Jean awoke to the same stillness. Machines beeped rhythmically beside him, nurses whispered in the hallway, and sunlight spilled gently through the blinds. Yet his world was not measured in hours or days. It was measured in blinks. Letter by letter, word by word, the alphabet chart became his lifeline. His therapist patiently recited, A, B, C. Zhang blinked when she reached the letter he wanted. Then the process began again. Over and over, until sentences formed, then paragraphs. It was exhausting, both for him and for those listening. But Jean's determination never wavered. If I can blink, he thought, then I can write. And if I can write, then I still exist. And so began the creation of his memoir. Every word in The Diving Bell and The Butterfly was dictated through this painstaking system. Dozens of blinks for a single sentence. Hours for a single page. His mind wandered to memories, walking along the streets of Paris, holding his children's hands, the thrill of editing at Elle magazine, the joy of love and friendship. He poured them all into his new book. But it wasn't just memories. Jean captured the raw truth of his condition, the humiliation of being washed by others, the frustration of not being understood, the loneliness of nights trapped in silence. Yet, instead of surrendering to despair, he transformed his suffering into poetry. The diving bell, he wrote, is the weight of my immobile body. But my mind is a butterfly, free to travel wherever it wishes. And indeed, his imagination became wings. He visited beaches, tasted fine meals, and relived the touch of laughter, all in the theater of his memory. While his body was a prison, his spirit roamed endlessly. Each completed page felt like a victory, a rebellion against fate. Nurses and friends marveled as entire chapters slowly came together. Jean, the man who could not move or speak, was writing one of the most extraordinary books the world would ever know. What began as a blink had now become a voice, and that voice carried farther than he could have ever imagined. By now, Jean's book had grown into something far greater than just his story. It had become his resistance. Each blink, each carefully chosen word was a declaration. I am still alive. I am still me. His doctors and therapists were astonished. Family members wept as they listened to his chapters. The man who could not move was somehow more alive than ever. Through the simple rhythm of blinking, Jean was crafting a masterpiece. But writing was not just about memory. It was also about facing his present reality. Jean described the endless monotony of hospital life, the tasteless food, the buzzing of machines, the strangers who came and went, never realizing the rich world inside his head. He captured moments of unbearable vulnerability, the frustration of needing help to scratch an itch, the humiliation of being treated as though he could not understand. And yet, he transformed this suffering into art. In one passage he described the diving bell of his body, heavy, suffocating, trapping him beneath the ocean of silence. In another, he unleashed the butterfly of his imagination, weightless, delicate, soaring beyond walls and machines. His words became wings, carrying readers into the depth of his mind. Day by day, chapter by chapter, the manuscript took shape. It was as if the universe had slowed down for Jean, giving him time to reflect on everything that truly mattered. He thought about his children, and with every word, he tried to leave them a legacy of strength and love. And then came the miracle. His dictated memoir, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, was finally completed. The manuscript, painstakingly composed through months of blinking, was ready to be shared with the world. For Jean, this was more than a book. It was proof that even when the body is silenced, the human spirit can roar louder than any voice. The day finally arrived. Jean's manuscript, born of patience and pain, was published. The title itself, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly captured the duality of his existence, a man imprisoned within his body, yet free within his imagination. The book was released in France in 1997, and what followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Newspapers, television stations, and literary critics all rushed to cover the miracle of the man who wrote a book by blinking. The world was stunned. Could such beauty truly come from such suffering? Readers everywhere found themselves deeply moved. His words were delicate yet powerful, heartbreaking yet full of hope. Jean had transformed silence into poetry, despair into courage. His memoir became an instant bestseller, translated into dozens of languages, inspiring millions of people. People who had never heard of locked-in syndrome suddenly understood it. Families of patients found comfort in his story. Strangers wrote letters to Jean, thanking him for showing them the strength of the human spirit. But amid the success, life for Jean remained fragile. He still lay in his hospital bed, still dependent on others for every small task. Yet he had achieved what few writers in history ever could. He had left behind a timeless work. And then, only days after his book's publication, tragedy struck. Jean-Dominique Bauby passed away from pneumonia, just 2 days after the memoir reached the shelves. The world mourned the man who, against all odds, had turned blinking into literature. His voice had been brief, but it echoed louder than many who spoke for a lifetime. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly remains one of the most unique books ever written, a testament that even in the darkest prison, the human spirit can find wings. Years passed, but Jean-Dominique Bauby's story never faded. His memoir continued to travel across countries, crossing oceans and generations. Each new reader opened the pages not just to discover his words, but to feel the weight of silence, the spark of imagination, and the triumph of the human will. Schools taught the Diving Bell and the Butterfly as a lesson in resilience. Doctors recommended it to families of paralyzed patients to remind them that a mind, no matter how trapped, could still dream. Artists, poets, and filmmakers drew inspiration from Jean's vision of turning despair into art. In 2007, 10 years after his death, the book was adapted into a French film directed by Julien Chenable. The movie received global acclaim, winning awards at Cannes and earning Oscar nominations. Through the screen, millions more discovered Jean's voice, the voice of a man who had lost everything but found a way to speak to the world. What made Jean's legacy so unforgettable was not only his suffering, but his choice. The choice to create rather than surrender, to write instead of wither in silence. With each blink, he built a cathedral of words, a sanctuary where human dignity triumphed over pain. His story is a reminder for all of us. The body may weaken, the world may confine us, but imagination remains limitless. Jean's life was short, his final years unbearably hard, yet his message became eternal, that beauty and meaning can emerge even from tragedy. Every time someone reads his memoir, they keep him alive. Every time someone whispers his title, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, another butterfly takes flight into the world. Jean-Dominique Bauby's body may have been a prison, but his soul left behind wings strong enough to inspire generations to come.
Thanks you for watch. Every old story holds a lesson worth remembering. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe for watch and listen more old times, real stories, and don't forget,